Hey there everyone, my name is Kevin Carlson. I'm a mortgage broker here in Canada. Thank you so much for checking out my channel today. Today we're going to be talking about credit, the top 10 ways to increase your credit score and keep it there. Here in Canada, there are two main credit reporting agencies. There's Equifax and TransUnion. Now, both of those companies also exist in the US, so primarily this video is going to be about the Canadian rules about getting your credit score higher, but this probably will apply to a lot of you Americans that might be watching as well. Having good credit doesn't mean you need to have a whole stack of credit cards and lots of loans to your name. That's just not the case. What we usually recommend for especially our first-time home buyers is to have at least one, maybe two credit cards, and then a loan that's been reporting for at least 2 years. That gets your foot in the door financially when it comes to mortgages and credit. After a couple of years of good solid repayment history with those few items, then your credit score should be nice and happy, well above 700. In order to be considered for a mortgage here in Canada, you need a minimum credit score of around 600. Below 600, things look pretty bleak. Then we're going to be used secondary lenders with higher interest rates and higher risk, and it's just not an area you want to be involved in. Get copies of both of your credit reports from both Equifax and TransUnion. You are allowed to request these reports for free directly from them in writing, and they'll just mail them to you. I'll put links in the description below that will tell you how to get copies of both of these reports and get them mailed to you. Once you receive those credit reports, it is important that you go over them in detail and be sure that all of the credit accounts are in fact yours. If there are any collections or any bad debts, you're going to want to address those first. Keep in mind though, if you have a very common name like John Smith or Sally Jones, those collections might actually not be yours. So it's a good idea to look into that sort of thing. Pay off any collections or bad debts that are showing up on your credit report. Whether it's from a credit card or a cell phone company or a loan of some sort, make sure you get rid of those as soon as possible. Those bad debts are dragging your credit score way down in the worst possible way. Here's a couple of side tips when it comes to dealing with collection agencies. Once you've gotten in touch with them and have found out what the collection is for and how much is owed, then you're going to want to have them send you at least a statement showing what is owed and how much you need to pay and how. Once they have provided that to you, then that is your key to be able to pay them in full. The very next thing you need to do is take the proof that you've paid the collection and send those to Equifax and TransUnion. The collection agencies are great about putting the collections on your credit report, but they're not very good at removing them, and it's not even their responsibility, it's yours. Don't put your social insurance card in your wallet. That, along with your driver's license, is all anybody needs to steal your identity and take credit out in your name. It is not a pretty picture when you found out that you have credit that doesn't belong to you, that somebody else took out and maxed your credit card out. Don't co-sign anything for people who are unreliable. When you co-sign so much as a cell phone to a loan to a mortgage, you are tying your credit financially to that person. So their missteps are your missteps. So make sure that if you're going to co-sign for somebody, that you have a good handle on the fact that they know how to be responsible for their credit. It might even be a good idea to get access to the account so that you can monitor the credit for yourself. If it's a credit card, it's certainly within your rights to do that, to be able to have online information on the account that you've co-signed. On the topic of cell phones, please be careful with that. That is financing. Here in Canada, many of the cell phone providers will actually finance the purchase of these expensive smartphones. So if you miss any payments, then your account can easily go into collections and you instantly owe $1,000 or $2,000 to one of these cell phone providers. Another thing to be careful of is rental of technical equipment like cable boxes, internet boxes, and that sort of thing. Limit the amount of credit cards that you have. If you have a wallet full of credit cards, more than 5 or 6, you might want to pare that down a little bit. The more credit cards that you have, the more possibility there is for somebody to commit fraud against you on one of those credit cards. If you do a lot of online purchasing, it might even be a good idea to have one of those credit cards with a reduced limit of, say, $500, and then just use that credit card for any online purchases. So if your information is stolen online, it's going to limit the amount of fraud that can take place. For the most part, if you're diligent on catching that sort of fraud that goes on and watching your accounts, the credit card companies will reverse the charges without too much trouble. But if you let it go too long, a couple months down the road, you notice a charge that wasn't for you, then they may not reverse it. Limit credit inquiries. Many people are aware that the more hits there are on your credit, the more that your credit goes down in score. Now, there's a very good reason for this. It's actually an anti-fraud measure for things like, especially vehicles. It prevents you from going out and getting leases and car loans on multiple vehicles to ship them off and sell them fraudulently, basically. So what happens is when you apply for a loan for a vehicle, then your score is going to take a pretty big dip right away. So the next time you go to a dealership within a day or two, then they're going to see that your credit score has taken a big dip and they won't give you any more credit for another vehicle. Within a few weeks, your credit score will go right back to where it should be. So no worries about your credit score going down and staying there, just over inquiries for car financing and that sort of thing. Make sure that you're not taking part in all these credit card promotions every time you walk into a store. Many of the stores here in Canada have a person standing there to greet you and ask you if you want more credit. Sometimes they even give you a little bit of a trinket to help you sign up. Well, try not to fall into those traps by taking out more credit than you really need. Excess inquiries is a flag when you're applying for a mortgage. If they see that you're applying for credit at different places, 6, 10, 15 times over a year, that's a big red flag for any mortgage lender. Reduce your revolving credit utilization. So when I say revolving credit, I mean credit cards and lines of credit. It's a good idea if you do not pay your credit cards off every month in full, which is a good idea anyway, is to use your utilization below 75%, 50%, or even better, 25%. So a $1,000 limit, try to keep it under $250 at any given time. One thing that people don't really realize is if you do have a credit card and you do pay it off in full every month, but you max it out every time, the credit report can't tell. So they only look at your accounts once per month. So at any given time of the month, you might be sitting at $900 all the time, but going down to zero shortly after that. The credit report cannot distinguish between somebody who maxes out their credit constantly and leaves it there and pays it to zero. Monitor your own credit. There are lots of credit monitoring services out there, and I don't really recommend very many of them. The ones that I do recommend are the ones that are provided by Equifax and TransUnion. Those are fine. But try not to sell your information off to these other companies. Who knows where your information is going to end up? Besides, those credit monitoring services are only going to tell you when something bad has already gone wrong. It's not going to prevent anything. With digital technology these days, it is easier than ever to monitor your own credit right from your phone. Double check any charges every few days and be sure that they actually are yours. If they're joint with somebody else, check with the other person, saying, hey, did you go out and buy a $15,000 snowmobile? Make sure you let me know. Pay your debts on time. And that should be number one, and it is number one. Paying your debts on time is extremely important. They're going to want to see that you make your payments every single month. Now, I know sometimes it's tempting that if you've got 2 or 3 credit cards that you're trying to pay off, that you want to put a whole lump sum payments onto one credit card and then leave the other ones. That's not a good idea. If the credit card company is looking for a minimum payment of $6, give them their $6. Make that $6 payment. If your next credit card needs $100, make sure you give them $100. Always make sure you're making the minimum payment. Set those credit cards up on automatic payments for the interest if you can. Many of the credit card companies out there will draw the minimum payment on a particular day that you choose, which pretty much set your payments up as an automatic, and your credit shouldn't suffer hardly at all. Well, that's the top 10 things on increasing your credit score and keeping it there. Being able to maintain good credit is a staple in being able to get a mortgage. If you never want to have credit, that's certainly fine. But keep in mind that a mortgage is credit, and they're going to want to see that you can handle small amounts of debt like credit cards and loans before they're going to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars in a mortgage. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. I hope you found that this was helpful. If you did, then consider subscribing to my channel to get notified when additional videos come out. If you have any questions about credit, please feel free to comment below or to contact me through my website. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much and have a terrific day.